Hello, everyone. Today, we are all about networking conversations. We are all about having great, authentic, connective, magnetic networking conversations. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for celebrating the immigrants who are here to thrive and not just survive. So, in our fast paced digital age, making genuine connections might seem challenging. So, today's session is all about networking conversations. We're going to discuss strategies to transform simple interactions into powerful relationships. So, whether you consider yourself to be a seasoned networker or you're just starting out, these insights will revolutionize the way you connect with others. It is my hope that for those of us who find ourselves in the shadows and very comfortable there, we become willing to come out of those shadows with these networking tools. So let's get into it as usual. First, let's take a look at the importance of networking, or rather, the importance of active listening. Networking isn't just about talking, it's equally about listening. Listening actively rather than listening to respond. Actively listening can open up opportunities and insights that you may miss otherwise. Genuine interest can lead to deeper, more meaningful conversations. And this is where asking questions come in. Open ended questions. These encourage detailed responses and fosters a genuine engagement. So what is an example of a open-ended question? For example, what inspired you to enter this field? Or what's been the most rewarding part of your current project? Another open-ended question might be, do you enjoy your job? Rather, no, that's a close-ended question. Do you enjoy your job? That can give you a yes or no answer, and really that could end the conversation prematurely when you think of it. So let's stick to open-ended questions, like, again, what's been in the most rewarding part of what you do? What would you say has inspired you with the people that you work with or the people that you serve, depending on the job that you do? And the other thing that you want to consider is sharing those personal stories. It humanizes you and it makes you more relatable. And this is where sharing challenges as well as successes and those funny anecdotes can break the ice. Every job sometimes can feel like, very often my colleagues and I think, we can have a sitcom, we can have a TV show, because the things that goes on within these various departments can be very entertaining, right? So sharing some of those funny stories can actually break the ice. And then you also discover that you have mutual vulnerabilities. You have mutual spaces where you're not necessarily the most comfortable within the job, and that can actually be a connecting point as well as your successes, right? Sometimes you may meet someone and you've both been able to have very similar achievements, and that can bring a connection. But you won't know it if you don't share these personal stories. Our non-verbal communication in networking. Body language can speak louder than words. And I've often said to candidates, sometimes your body language will walk into the room before you do, right? So positive body language, smiling, a genuine smile, nodding, open posture. You're not standing like this and you don't have your face, right? Welcoming. This signals engagement. It signals that you are open to a conversation and that you want to have a conversation. Now, we are aware that there may be cultural differences when it comes to body language, especially when networking or having conversations with individuals from diverse backgrounds. So you want to think about how your body language will affect the other person. For example, in some cultures, looking someone directly in the eye, it's considered disrespectful. But keep in mind the sandbox that we're playing with here in the United States, that eye contact, if you don't make that eye contact, it may be considered something shifty, right? So you want to consider the differences in body language. And I have another video on body language as well as cultural differences. But I think perhaps next week's live, I'll do the whole cultural differences again. But being aware of that nonverbal communication, you have to really be aware of that. And then you want to show up as yourself. So I went from nonverbal or communication to authenticity, but authenticity is key. People can sense inauthenticity. So you want to be genuine in your interactions. You really putting on a false face or extra bravado that's not there, speaking really loudly when you know that you're a soft spoken person, you're not being your authentic self. So you need to be genuine in your interactions. When you're your authentic self, you foster trust and you establish credibility in your professional settings. So you want to consider, how am I showing up? And remember, it is okay not to know everything. It is okay not to have all the answers. Your honesty will be appreciated. One thing that we can say in today's world is, I really don't know the answer to that, but let me get back to you. This is really interesting. I'm going to go research that. That's an invitation to get someone's contact information to follow up, right? So again, it's okay not to know everything or to have all the answers. And your honesty definitely will be appreciated. So I'm checking the comments because I've become accustomed to just running through and not checking the comments. So good morning, Royston. Thank you for joining me. Good morning, Renee. Thank you for joining me. Hello, Denise. Thank you for joining. Okay, so let's move on. So we only have two more things, which is mindful transitions. One is mindful transitions. In networking events, it is important to know how to gracefully enter and to exit conversations. You want to use transitions like, it's been great speaking with you. I hope we can catch up in more detail later, right? So you want to be mindful of how you are and graceful in how you enter a conversation and also in how you exit the conversation. You are not there to hog all the person's time, but you want to make an impact and exit. And finally, and this is something that we speak about in every area, but we come back to it over and over again, cultural sensitivity, especially in diverse settings. If you're in cities where for example, in New York City, you can probably meet every single culture and also be aware of the conversations taking place in the world today, right? You have to be aware of cultural nuances. You want to understand that networking etiquette can vary. For instance, some cultures might find it very intrusive to ask personal questions too soon, right? You don't just want to jump into that. So you want to be aware of cultural sensitivity. And again, in the next live, I'll go more into different ways in which we can hone in on that cultural sensitivity. But you want to consider the differences in how people consider personal questions, right? For some cultures, personal questions have absolutely no place within a networking setting, within a professional setting. In others, personal questions are the norm, right? So there's bias on both sides, there's stereotypes on both sides of the equation, and we as immigrants have to be aware of that thinking that we may bring to the conversation as well. So definitely you want to understand that networking can vary, and consider what other cultures may consider to be intrusive. And also, you want to give a lot of grace, right? You want to give grace for the fact that everyone is not necessarily from the same culture, and we may have different ideas of what is appropriate and what is proper. And this is where following up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. When we turn a networking conversation into a meaningful connection, follow up is absolutely required. And this follow up can be a simple email or a simple message mentioned in your conversation, and that can make a lasting impression. It was so great to speak with you about XYZ. Thank you. It was so great to meet you today. Thank you, right? You want to absolutely follow up on every conversation possible. So I want you to, and this is where your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn connections come in. I am that person who, for years, I did not connect with anyone on LinkedIn unless I met them in person. So practically everyone in my LinkedIn circle at this time, all 500 plus people, I have met them either in person or on a networking type virtual event, especially during COVID, or at a conference, or we work together in some capacity. I had to have met, that was my personal criteria. I had to have met you in some way, shape, or form so that we had a connection, and that was my personal criteria for connecting on LinkedIn. I'm a bit more open today, but that personal connection allowed me to then say to that person, it was great meeting you at XYZ event. And when I go to them now and I ask a question, I'm not some vague non-entity, or at least they're not a vague non-entity to me. I know exactly who this person is, and I often know more about them than their LinkedIn profile is telling today. Which brings me to the conversation of LinkedIn profiles. It's one of the easiest places for us to connect online, especially in a professional capacity, but it's also a space where things can go wrong pretty quickly. Think about it this way. Everything about you speaks. And if I come onto your profile and it is looking crazy out here in the streets, as Faith James says, I am going to have a slightly different perception of you. So I want you to keep in mind that the goal of networking conversations, much like interviews, is to establish a genuine connection. The more natural and engaging the conversation, the more likely it is to foster a meaningful and professional relationship. But before we wrap up, back to that LinkedIn thing, remember that networking does not end when the conversation does. So to help you to continue to build and nurture these invaluable connections, I invite you to download our exclusive LinkedIn checklist. This tool will guide you step by step to optimize your profile, engage meaningfully, and maximize your networking efforts on LinkedIn. So grab the checklist by clicking the link in bio and elevate your networking game. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Thank you for participating in the Career Thrivers conversations. I appreciate you. Have a great day.